Throughout my very short time on YouTube doing reviews of games, I have probably mentioned Dark Souls in almost every single one. So with that being said, you can probably guess that Souls-likes are my favourite genre. In fact, midway through last year was my first time playing every FromSoft Souls-like, and not even a full year later I am playing through them again. This obsession of Souls-likes for me started with my very first playthrough of Dark Souls 1, where I remember having this really horrible build and not really knowing what I was doing. My build was so bad that I actually got stuck fighting the 4 kings for nearly a month, which means that's probably like a week per king or something. But despite me having such a horrible time playing the game, something just kept pulling me back into it, and at the time I never really stopped to think about what that something was. That is until a year or so later, Elden Ring came out, and I realised that it was because of, on the most part, it never really was the game's fault that I was doing so bad in Dark Souls, it was my fault. After beating Elden Ring, I made it my goal to beat every other FromSoft Souls-like, and I started that journey with their first ever Souls game, and I think the first Souls game in general, Demon's Souls. Yeah, it's got kind of a stupid name, and most people just call it Demon Souls, which I probably will for the rest of this video.
Actually, the title is grammatically correct, as it is a common misconception by fans that it's a bad English translation of the original Japanese title, as there is one demon who owns or wants to own all the souls, meaning the apostrophe is in the correct place.
Shut the fuck up, you nerd! This is a game review, not an English class, you fucking idiot! Anyway, this was From Software's first ever Souls-like, and for this review I am playing the remastered version made by Bluepoint, as I don't have access to a PlayStation 3 to play the original. But from what I understand, other than graphics and making the parry mechanics a little less janky, the game is mostly unchanged. Upon starting the game, we immediately get to create our character, so I now humbly introduce you to Beanflicker Guna, our main character in today's story. We then get a cutscene telling us that the King of Boletaria, King Allant, was using a type of magic known as the Soul Arts to bring peace and prosperity to the land, but a deep, colourless fog swept across the land of Boletaria, cutting it off from the outside world. But one fella named Valifax escaped the fog and told everyone that the king had awoken a demon known as the Old One, who was essentially the leader of the demons. The Old One unleashed an army of demons to hunt down men and take their souls, and once men lose their souls, they go crazy and become what's known as soul-starved. Valifax also told people that when a demon kills a human, its own soul gains power beyond human imagination, which was entice others to try and go through the fog and kill demons for their own selfish gain. We are also told this fog is spreading to other lands and will eventually lead to the end of humanity unless stopped. And that's all we really get in the way of story in this game. Similar to Dark Souls and future FromSoft games, a lot of the story is hidden in item descriptions and is really up to the player's interpretation. We do get another cutscene a little bit later in the game, which essentially says that this whole scourge of demons killing humanity has happened once or twice before, but that's really all we get in terms of story. But how about we get into the gameplay, shall we? Overall, this really does feel like a beta for Dark Souls, even in the remastered version. But it is cool to see how these games have evolved from Demon's Souls all the way up to Elden Ring. I do recommend, if you are a long-time Souls fan and haven't played them in release order from Demon's Souls all the way up to Elden Ring, you give it a shot, because it is cool to see, like I said, how they evolve from beginning to end. The bosses in this game don't feel as hard or as polished as later games. Having carry capacity for items is annoying, and farming for heals in this game is just also really fucking annoying as well. There are some standout bosses like Flame Lurker and Tower Knight, but a lot of these bosses are either gimmick fights or annoying and underwhelming. It is interesting though to see how FromSoft thought that the gimmick fights would be the main way to do boss fights in this game, to immediately do a 180 in the next game and have almost no gimmick fights at all, and it'd be actual proper fights like the Tower Knight and Flame Lurker fight. Overall, Demon's Souls was the beginning of From Software's almost 2-decade-long streak of absolute bangers. And although this isn't the best game in their catalogue, it is still pretty good, especially considering it was the first of its kind. I give it a 7 out of 10. As always, champions, please remember to go like and subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Bye.